Hey everyone, welcome back to the vlog. I feel like it's been a long time, and I think I say this every time. It's been a long time since I've been back on the vlog. For those who don't know me, I'm Nicole, and I started YouTube a long time ago to basically document our journey through infertility. We did IVF, a whole bunch of things, and I will get into that. From the title of this video, you can see that I found out I was pregnant on the 14th of December, which is really crazy because that's when I found out that I was pregnant with my son Roman 12 years ago. That was my pregnancy test day, that I took a pregnancy test and found out that I was officially pregnant, which was crazy. So on the 14th of December last year, I found out that I was pregnant when my baby was only 4 months old, which is crazy. And it's even more crazy because of my backstory. So I'm going to give a real quick spiel of my backstory for all of those of you who already know my backstory and have heard it 1,000 times before. Skip ahead a bit and we'll get to the actual me finding out that I was pregnant part. When I got married when I was 19, so back in 2008 I got married, and we started trying for a baby right away. My husband's name is Martin. We were really young, so we shouldn't have had fertility issues. I did have PCOS, was diagnosed officially when I was 18, but it had problems since like 14, 15 years old. Pretty much my whole period of life, I'd had issues. Officially got diagnosed when I was 18, but that was kind of it. So started trying for a baby after our wedding. A year went by, nothing. Decided to see a fertility specialist. Went on Clomid, did 7 rounds of Clomid, ovulated on the first one, the rest of them absolutely nothing. Another year goes by, then they decide that I should do injectable cycles. That's when you take the same drugs as if you were doing IVF, but then you just do the deed yourself, not without getting the embryo put back in. And I did so many cycles of that, it wasn't even funny. And it worked. I was ovulating every time, timing was perfect, and I just was not getting pregnant. And it was just so frustrating. I just remember those years in my life being incredibly frustrating. So then I did an HSG, hysteropimpanogram, or whatever it's called, and that's where they put dye through your tubes. It was extremely painful, and I never want to do that again. And they say it's not meant to be painful, you're meant to just have a little bit of cramping, but I found it extremely painful. And that showed that my tubes were clear, Martin's sperm count came back perfect, and then they were like, maybe you have unexplained infertility. And it just, those couple of years were really horrible. Then obviously we then did IVF, and our first round of IVF, I got ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, OHSS, landed me in hospital for 8 days. It was an awful time in my life. I was on morphine, I was on oxygen, I was peeing pee that was the colour of Fanta, which is bright orange. My belly swelled to the size of someone who was 9 months pregnant. It was rough. I should really do a story on having OHSS because I don't think I ever really did a story on it, but it was rough, awful. So anyway, after that, we did our first embryo transfer, which was obviously a frozen embryo transfer because obviously I got sick, and it was successful. And I had my first baby, Roman, who is now 13, coming up 13 this year. And then when he turned, I don't know, 18 months or something like that, when we tried for baby number 2, which was with a frozen embryo transfer, because we had another embryo on ice. We did that embryo transfer. I got pregnant, unfortunately ended in miscarriage. Then we did IVF again, and that cycle got cancelled because I was on track to getting ovarian hyperstimulation again. So they had to stop with thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars down the drain. Then we did another round of IVF and did a fresh embryo transfer, and I got pregnant. And that was with my daughter Mila Rose, who is 10 this year. Then decided to have another baby again, and obviously by that time we were like, we're not forking out thousands of dollars for IVF, so we're just going to see what we can do and leave it to chance. So we ended up doing Femara, also known as letrozole, and it worked. I was ovulating, so within 4 months I was pregnant with baby number 3, and that was insane considering what we'd gone through to have the first 2 kids. So that worked. Crazy. Obviously Clomid just didn't work out for me, and I'm not even sure they even use Clomid these days. I think it's just letrozole now. So then obviously baby number 3, and then we were quite happy. And then for some strange reason we decided, why not have one more? But we waited to have a 7-year age gap between children before another one, and so we decided to try for baby number 4. Again, letrozole, so we did that, and after 6 months nothing was happening. I was ovulating every time, great numbers, and I just wasn't getting pregnant. So we stopped, and the very next month my nipples started burning really badly, and I was like, what the heck is this? Weird. Found out I was pregnant. So that was with baby number 4, and she is currently 6 months old. And that is my fertility story in a very brief nutshell. That is my fertility story. I'd love to get into details, but this is a very, like, with my eldest being 12 and having infertility for years before him, this is a really big chunk of my life of infertility. So for all that story, you'd have to go all the way back in my YouTube channel to 13 years ago to see all that. Anyway, okay. So now we're back to December 14th, 2023. So last year. I'm only getting around to doing this story now because it's just, I've got 4 kids. One of them's a baby, so I just haven't had time. So a few weeks prior to me finding out that I was pregnant, with what would have been baby number 5, I had weird things going on with my taste, which is something that I didn't really have happen with my other pregnancies. It wasn't a symptom. I just noticed that when I was eating things, like, it would taste like plastic, and at one point I couldn't taste anything at all, and Martin was like, oh, you must have COVID, and then he said, oh, maybe you're pregnant, and we were just joking about it, because obviously, you know, a symptom of pregnancy is like weird taste, usually metallic or something like that. So we did joke around at the thought of that. Oh, excuse me. And then a couple of weeks later, I started to get some spotting, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, Blakely's only 4 months old. I'm going to get a period. I'd never ever had periods through breastfeeding my children before. In fact, the only periods I really had were medically induced ones, because I didn't get periods because I had PCOS. I never got periods. Half the reason why I had to do fertility treatment. So I started spotting, and I remember messaging a friend saying, oh my gosh, I think I'm getting my period, and Blakely's only 4 months old. This is crazy. Blah, 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 blah. And then I said to Martin, I'm just going to whip to the supermarket. So this was a couple of days later. I said that I'd whip to the supermarket because the spotting wasn't stopping. So I was like, I need to go get organised because I'm going to get my period and get some supplies for right now. So some panty liners or something. Because I don't tend to carry this stuff around with me because I don't get my period. And I just thought this was, like, I thought it was quite neat. I was like, wow, my body's doing something for the first time in my life on its own. And then I went to the supermarket and I grabbed some panty liners, and I was like, I'll just grab a pregnancy test as well. Because, you know, when weird bleeding happens, it could be pregnancy, right? In the back of my head, I was like, I know I'm just buying this pregnancy test just because I want to pee on a pregnancy test, because I'm a pee on a stickaholic. I've taken so many pregnancy, I could say thousands of pregnancy tests in the past 12 years, 13 years. No, 14 years, because prior to Roman, it wasn't going to be positive. I was like, so I wanted to buy a cheap one because I knew it wasn't going to be positive. But they had sold out of the cheap ones, and they'd sold out of the single First Response. So I had to buy a 3-pack of First Response, which have changed. They have a pink cap now, instead of the clear pink one. So these look different, but these are First Response. You can see there, First Response. So I got a 3-pack and was really annoyed that I had to pay that much for them. I think it cost me like $21 or something, but I thought to myself, oh well, at least, you know, the other 2 are going to be in my cupboard, drawer, whatever, ready for another day when I have a inkling that I'm pregnant. So I went home, opened up the panty liners, chucked one of my undies, and then I paid on the pregnancy test. And on pregnancy tests, like, if you know, you know. Like, if you're a pee on a psycholic, you know. The line goes across, the pee goes across, right? And where your pregnant line comes up, sometimes there will be like a bit of a shadow line that comes up, and then it slowly disappears once the test has done its thing, right? Well, the shadow line came up and I was like, okay, yep, sweet. I'm used to that. That's cool. But then it didn't go away, and then it started to turn pink, and it didn't leave. It just got darker and darker, and I was like, oh my God, what the heck? And I sat there and I wish I'd filmed this. I wish I had filmed this but of course I wasn't actually expecting it to be positive. My jaw hit the floor, not even kidding you. My eyes would have been like deer in the headlights. My mouth hit the floor, and I was like, what the heck? My first thought was, holy crap, I'm only 4 months postpartum and from a C-section. So my 3rd child was born via emergency C-section, went through the labour and everything was going perfectly until he decided to come out feet first, and then it turned into an emergency C-section because it was an undiagnosed footling breech. Had the C-section, he got stuck, so they had to give me an inverted T incision for my C-section, so I have not a common C-section wound. So then after that, I had, with Blakely, my 4th child, I had to have an elective C-section, because obviously there's that risk of obviously abruption and all that. And while I didn't really want a C-section, I just knew that it was going to be safer for both me and baby to just do the C-section, because there's weak points obviously where the T incision is, and I want to live, and so does my baby. So I'd only had a C-section 4 months prior, and I was like, this is not good, this is bad. Like, I cannot, like, on this hand I'm like, holy crap, I'm pregnant. I got pregnant completely surprised, out of the blue, out of nowhere. And on this hand I'm like, I had a baby via C-section only 4 months ago. My incision isn't going to be healed enough. Like, is this going to be really dangerous? Like, am I going to be able to cope with 2 babies really young together? Because all my kids have been a 3-year age gap, and then 7 years between my 3rd baby and my 4th. So there was panic, and then there was like shock, happy shock, and yeah. But anyway, I'll show you the pregnancy test. So this is the pregnancy test. Obviously this has been sitting for 2 months. So this is the test that I took, the first one. I found out I was pregnant. So yeah, it was a big shock to see that, big shock. It's all a bit yellowy and weird now because it's been a couple of months. And then, just so I don't have to reset the camera, that's the second one. And then this is the third one. That one's got weird spots on it. So as you can see, this one's pretty much negative. But here's the first 2. So the first one, and then the second one was a bit lighter. And then the third one, there's nothing on it. Okay, so yeah, found out I was pregnant. Then obviously I realised that I'm spotting. So I thought, oh no, this is probably not good. Like, I'm probably going to lose this pregnancy. Next day I started to bleed. So I'm not spotting anymore, I'm bleeding. And the bleeding went from just medium to heavy, and then it went from heavy to extra heavy, and then it went from extra heavy to I should probably go to the hospital. I didn't go to the hospital, because if those who know me in real life know that I would have to be pretty much dying to go to a hospital. I don't go to, it's not that I don't like hospitals, it's that I don't like being fussed over, and I feel like, you know when you feel sick and then you go to the doctor and you feel better and you're like, oh, now I feel better and I'm at the doctor's and I paid this money. It's kind of like I'm going to turn up at hospital and it's going to be nothing serious and I'm going to feel like a dick. That's the issue I have with going into hospital. And when I ask for an ambulance, like when I had my SVTs with my heart at the start of Blakely's pregnancy, when I ask for an ambulance, it's serious, because I will never be seen getting into an ambulance, because that's just far too dramatic for me. So it's bad if I'm asking for an ambulance. So I was like, no, I'm not going to go to the hospital. I'm just going to wait this out. I'm just going to see how we go. But the bleeding was excessively heavy. And it was just, this is all obviously going to be a lot of TMI. It was just really, really bright red blood just everywhere. I sent a photo to Martin at one point going, I think this is really bad. And it was, yes, I know this is gross and TMI, but this is just life. And it was just a photo, and the whole toilet bowl was just splattered with blood over the toilet seat. My undies and pad and everything were on the floor, completely flooded with blood, and all down the toilet seat was just covered in blood. And I was like, holy crap, there is no way in how this pregnancy is continuing. This is definitely gone. Yeah, so the bleeding got really, really heavy. And then after, I think a day or two later, is when I started to pass really big clots. And it was just really, bloody and clotty. And then I passed a really big clot, like a thick, big clot. And I have a feeling that maybe that was the pregnancy and its bits and pieces that come with a pregnancy gone. Because as soon as that bit came out, the bleeding almost stopped instantly. Like it went from being stupidly heavy to spotting again. It went really light. So after that big chunk came out, we guesstimate, because obviously it wasn't a planned pregnancy, so I've got no idea when I got pregnant. So we had to kind of look back in calendars and think of dates and think of when things happened, and so we guesstimate that I was about 7 weeks. Obviously, after all the bleeding, everything, and the big blood clot came out, obviously I then messaged my doctor and said, look, I think I've had a miscarriage. Can I just get some blood work done just so I know that it's finished, it's ended, and I don't have to worry about things going wrong. So I went and got the blood test, and it came back and it did confirm that I was no longer pregnant. So I found out that I was pregnant and then not pregnant within a matter of not very long. So luckily it meant that I didn't have a lot of time to get attached to the pregnancy. When you find out you're pregnant, it doesn't take long for you to start thinking of baby names and thinking of the pregnancy journey and how fun things are going to be and what you're going to do and what they're going to look like and all that stuff that you do when you find out you're pregnant. I didn't have a chance to do that, really, because it just happened so quickly and then ended so quickly. So I'm grateful that I didn't have a chance to really think about it, because it means that even now I don't feel emotional about it at all. On the day, I was like, I had a cry about it, and I was like, this really sucks. I know it's for the best, but it really sucks, because I don't ever have surprise pregnancies. Blakely, yes, technically she was a surprise pregnancy, but I'd been on a lot of drugs and I think that helped. But this was a literal, completely out of the blue, spontaneous, unplanned pregnancy. And I've never had one of those before. So it was quite exciting. Since then, I have not had another cycle at all. So we are in February now, and I've not had any other cycles. So I don't think I'm going to have one, to be honest. I think it was just obviously completely random and spontaneous. But yeah, so I feel fine talking about it. I'm not sad. It was just another interesting story in my journey. I still find that so crazy. I look at these and I'm like, wow, I wish I had filmed it. So yeah, that one's definitely had no line on it. That's when it went negative. So I knew for sure between the bleeding and a negative pregnancy test that the pregnancy was no longer happening. Crazy the size of the thing that came out of me though. It was like, there's no way I can explain it. It's being just like a real, like a blood clot, but it was like thick and big. Yeah, I didn't really look at it enough to be like, oh, there's veins through it or anything like that, or look for a baby. I didn't even think to look, to be honest. I was just too traumatized with the amount of blood that was coming out of me to even think to look at this sacky thing that came out. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have had a look. Maybe there was something in there. Who knows? Probably not. Would have only been a speck. At 7 weeks, it would have been like a tiny little speck. And that's only 7 weeks guessing. Who knows? That is my story. My crazy, crazy story. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Comment if you'd like to. Whatever your experience, questions, anything like that. And I will see you in my next vlog. Alright, thanks for listening to my story. Bye.